right now I think ICE margins are around 10 to 15% gross margin. If they fall, you're going to have companies that are, literally going to go unprofitable overnight in terms of like a net profit basis.
It depends on two things. One, what happens to their financing arms, what kind of assumptions they have to tweak in their residual values. So that's one. And then number two, how fast they shrink their company, how fast they shrink their ICE business, right? I mean, they've been pretty, all legacy automakers have been very aggressive in shrinking their ICE business in the last year. I think they know what's coming. So if they shrink new car production and increase their ASPs on ICE, like MSRPs, a little higher, then maybe the implosion waits another year, because the leases they generated at the beginning of this year, at the end of last year, is the really problematic ones, and they're not going to come due until 2 or 3 years. So that's more around end of 2024. If we get robotaxis, if Tesla turns on robotaxis in the coming months, then all bets are off. Joe?
Yeah, I was wondering if you could do a quick review of all the FSD targets for the next few weeks, because I've totally lost track of which versions are deployed, which versions need to be deployed, including the 11 for number one Tesla to acknowledge. So my brain's having a brain fart. Just basically recognize all the revenue for FSD. What version needs to be deployed, everyone, to do that? Has that already happened? Because it doesn't have to be V11 from what I understand. And do we think they're still on track for V11?
I mean, we need wide release. We don't know exactly what's needed, because it's really up to management, Tesla management, when they recognize it. In my opinion, they could have recognized it already. I think it's because management wants to be conservative. I don't think it's auditor driven that they're not recognizing these deferred revenues. The fact is, even when someone pays for this FSD software, let's say I go and buy a Tesla today, pay $15,000, I don't have an option to get a refund. Like, I already paid them. They already have the cash. And legally, there's no promise of a robotaxi or even like level 4, level 3 driving. I'm paying for software. I get some service for it today, and I can't get a refund. So technically, like from an auditing accounting perspective, they should be able to recognize it. But Tesla management, I think, is being conservative on this front. So we don't know.
But wide release of which versions?
So listen, the question you're asking is about deferred revenue recognition, right? We don't know the answer to that question.
I thought this is the information that you're supposed to provide.
No, there's a lot of talk around deferred revenue recognition. It's not really my thing. Even in this space, I kind of like gave my margin predictions. I said excluding FSD deferred revenue recognition, because I really don't care about that $1 billion. What's more important to me is what's off the balance sheet, which is the Lawsons of the world, where he's not even using the software. I mean, he's even paid for the software. But there are also 2 million people out there that haven't paid for it, more than 2 million people out there that haven't paid for the software. And if they want to use FSD when it's good, they're going to have to either pay $15,000 or $300 a month. So 2 million people times 15,000, we're looking at $30 billion. That's way more important to financials and the intrinsic value than the $1 billion that's deferred revenue recognition. That's, already we got the cash for it, so it doesn't impact free cash flows. It may make you win the bet though, Joe, our PE ratio bet. There's that.
It already dipped into the 40s. And now
the bet is 40. What are you talking about? The bet is 40.
No, I know. I'm just saying it's already, before earnings have gone up next quarter, it's already dipped into the 40s. I know what the bet is. I'm just saying, if the stock price stayed flat, you would agree. I mean, it basically mathematically would win the bet. So the stock price has to go up for you And of course, I want the stock price to go up too.
Right, yeah, the stock price has to go up on it. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, if the stock price is here, come end of January, you probably win. Has a thought?
So yeah, man, what did you make of the Elon tweet there?
There's nothing to be made. I mean, there's no new information. A tweet that you can. Tesla will be great long term, but doesn't control macroeconomic tides.
I think that's a caution.
Okay. So are you selling your stock then based on that caution?
Obviously not, but I'm just saying.
I'm going to remove that tweet. I also generally don't like people putting tweets up, without running them by me.
Did Elon not say that he wants the Fed to cut rates next meeting, or what was that tweet? Can you put that tweet up about the rates that he was talking about, or do you know off the top of your head?
It was if they raise rates at all. So
yeah, so
yeah,
he said a couple of months ago, Elon said that Fed should cut rates. And his most recent tweets on Fed action was, if they raise rates again, they're going to deepen the recession.
Oh yeah, I think the last tweet was he was kind of advocating for a 25 basis point cut. I think that's what he said.
I don't think Powell cares about what Elon says on rate action. Whether he should care or not is a different story. But I don't think Powell is watching what Elon's tweeting. And there's a lot of frustration around tweeting. Obviously, I don't have to remind you on this. And I wish that we were talking more about V11, 4680 RAM, cybertruck production, semi. There are zillions of people asking questions about those fundamentals of the business. And yeah.
Has anyone gotten a chance to view Sandy Monroe's Cybertruck casting video there?
Yeah, the live reaction.
No, he just came out with a 3-minute one. I wanted to watch it, but maybe somebody here already has. So
yeah, if anybody has watched that video, please request to speak and share with us kind of a summary.
How am I supposed to have time to review another video if I'm stuck here as a speaker?
Yeah, you and me. Okay, Alice here just requested to speak, so maybe he has
one of us you leave the speaker stage, go watch it and report back.
Who's gonna take one for the team?
Yeah, 3 minutes. If you're not back before then, you'll never be a speaker again.
Joe left already.
Start the timer.
Start the timer.
Let's see if Joe watches his videos on 2x speed.
I'm going to drop Alice here to speakers. I listen real quick and then bring him back up because I think he's having some connection issues. Alice here, welcome.
Hi, yeah, man. Yeah, I watched it.
What do you got?
It's unfortunately not very exciting. Basically, it's Sandy's realized that these are prototype castings that have been welded together. He is interested in how they're planning to bond the cast rear pieces to the body, because you don't want to weld aluminium and stainless steel together. So basically, there's a few question marks over exactly what they're doing, but he said that the pieces that we can see are 5 or 6 prototype cast pieces welded together. And he's basically said, well, the gigapress is not here, so it's not surprising.
Right, exactly. Okay, so I'm going to, at the top of your screens. Also, there's some news that Model Y performance is now available, track mode, or Model Y performance is now available with the latest version of the software update. That's good news. And I pinned Sandy's video at the top of the screens. And yeah, Alice, since the casting machine is not there, it makes sense that it's a prototype. But it also doesn't, like he was excited about the size of this thing.
Yes, but
the reason why he was excited about the first is still there.
I think it's not clear whether those pieces are going to be cast as small pieces and welded, or if one giant piece. If it was one giant piece, yeah, I think that would be exciting. And hopefully that's what it is, because the prototype pieces that he is speaking about seem to be smaller than Model Y front or rear castings, or about the same size. So you would imagine that you wouldn't need a 9,000 ton press for, castings of similar size.
Joe, what did you learn?
Well, I watched the video, but I missed Alistair's comments, so I'm assuming he already watched it, and I have nothing new to add.
Okay, cool. Brian, welcome.
Hi, Yaman. So, I would point I want to make is not about the semi-truck so much, although it kind of relates, is that my focus of analysis has been on the semi-truck and how that semi delivery day, I think, is indicating, like the iPhone reveal in 2007, kind of the death of the old stuff, the death of diesel semi. And the reason I say that is I think that there are 10x forces in what the semi can do, which are not being looked at. So 10x forces are referring back to the Andy Grove, Intel CEO, talking about, there's a wind, competitive force, a wind or a small wave. But then if you 10x it, it becomes a hurricane or it becomes a tsunami. And so the 10x forces are two. One is the economics of the Tesla Semi, which is people say the numbers, but I don't think they fully recognize them, is that if you're driving 60,000 or 100,000 miles per year, that with a diesel, that's $60,000 to $100,000 of fuel every year. And if you drive 100,000 miles with a Tesla Semi with 1.7 kilowatt hours per mile, that's 170 kilowatts. And if you have, 7 to 9 cents, let's call it 10 cents per kilowatt hour wholesale electric pricing, then that's $17,000. So that's like $80,000 for, say, the 20% of the semis that are driving the 100,000 miles. So I call that a 10x force because if you compare that to the fuel saving costs of a Model 3 and Model Y, then depending on how you drive, you're looking at $3,000 to $5,000 per year of fuel savings for the Model 3, Model Y, versus $80,000 for the Tesla Semi. And then even if you would adjust that ratio, so that's like 20x. If you have 4K average for your savings per year of fuel from a Model 3, Model Y versus 80K for a Semi, then that's a 20x economic signal to say buy the Semi. There's also
Thank you, Brian.
Yeah.
Go ahead, sir. Finish your thought, and then we'll go to Alistair.
And then the other thing is that another 10x force is the charging speed. That they 2 megawatt charging versus fast charging at 150 at most 300. That's almost another 10x charging, which have a real world improvement in that instead of charging for 4 hours or 8 hours, you're charging in 30 minutes, which means you can do more loads, again, improving the economics of that. Okay, go ahead.
Alistair?
Hello, Brian. I have a couple of questions. I actually wanted to ask you one yesterday just before you left. So I have two. I have one saved up from yesterday and another one based on your comments. So I'll start with the first one based on your comments about the 10x forces and the economics. Have you modeled what or thought about how that might look if a customer of a semi-truck requires on-site batteries to support charging?
Yeah, so I think actually the fact that it needs a mega pack on site or at the supercharging stations is actually a beneficial feature. If they have to buy it themselves, and that's, if they're buying in low volumes, $2.5 million, they're buying high volumes, about $2 million, and you can buy multiple mega packs. The ratio that I see them needing is on the order of 6 to 1 to 10 to 1. It depends upon the use case. I'm not totally clear on it. It depends if you want to go with 10-to-1 for a more conservative assumption, or 6-to-1 or 5-to-1. But there will be a need, I think, for Megapack in that range. So if they're buying them, so I buy 10 trucks, let's call it 200,000 each, that's $2 million, and I need a Megapack, then I basically need to double up my spending to get that $2 million Megapack than buying in volume. So, but if for some reason I don't want to do the CapEx, I'm sure that Tesla would do a deal where, okay, we buy the Megapack, but then we charge you subscription, whatever fees, to recover that cost. So it's profitable at 30% margin for Tesla to do that for you. So you'll pay that Tesla back over 5 years, something like that. The Megapack, or you step up and do it and say, okay, I spent $4 million for 10 trucks. I will save 10 trucks, $800,000 per year on fuel. I will make back my payback in 5 years, right? But I'll fully own a Megapack, and the Megapack is actually accelerating that conversion because I can stick solar on my roof, or I can ensure that I have good wholesale pricing of my electricity, so I can make sure to cover that. Plus, if I have a factory or something there, then I can use the Megapack to, do load balancing, do other things to make that power back. That become my own little utility with solar and the battery. So it's not like it's a pure cost. I'm only doing it for my trucks. I'm also doing it for the overall savings of my plant. So that depends upon the plant, how that will pay out. But worst case, I see like a 5-6 year payback period. But more likely than the 3-year payback period, and it depends upon the economics of the plant, how quickly you recover. But the fact that they can get into the utility energy business, like just for me, like I have power walls, I'm making, $1,000, whatever, on the virtual power plant thing. If you have auto bidder, you can make more money and do more deals with utilities to do it. And also you're avoiding the penalties of, the high time of use, other things. If I have a predictable load, which is at 25% of what I would need if I, allow the spikes to happen, then I'm a better customer for the utility. They will cut me a better deal. I can ensure I keep a good deal versus, I'm spiking me up. I'm going to pay 35 cents per kilowatt, $1 per kilowatt, and just something insane that would ugly wreck economics. So they have insurance against that. So it makes the financial model clean for them. Yeah, and like I said, savings of other energy all over. So that's the other thing about the semi-day is that it's guaranteeing Tesla energy at scale. Many lathrops, 40 gigawatt hours, $30 billion per, maybe $40 billion per, just, and the building out of the mega charge that every supercharger 4 level, which is also used for cybertruck. So it's ensures the scaling of the Tesla energy model and utter truck dominance for semi and cybertruck. Someone else have any questions? Tesla.
I have a couple of small follow-up questions to that, Brian, if you don't mind. First one, do you think, have you considered the duty cycle of the trucks? Is 1 Megapack going to be enough for 6 to 10? And the second question is, we were talking yesterday about plaid motors are obviously key enabler of the semi-truck efficiency and probably Cybertruck also. Do you have any thoughts on the cost of a plaid motor versus a Model Y motor?
I don't know what the motor price difference is. Presumably it's more. The ratio. So 3.9 megawatt hours for Megapack. So if you're doing a 70% charge on 900 kilowatt hours for a 500-mile range, then you're looking at 600-ish kilowatt hours. So you're looking at about 6.5 charges. Where I take a Megapack that's fully charged, and then I'm charging up truck after truck after truck, and then recharging the Megapack. So it's about 6 to 1. You may double them up and in order to do whatever rates, but roughly the 6-to-1 ratio. It could be 10-to-1 if I have 300-mile range trucks. But then, if I have a lower use rate, it could drop off to less. But that's how I get my 6-to-10 kind of range ratio.
Cool, thank you, Brian.
You're welcome.
Yeah, next big future. I don't know if you priced out the cost for a mega pack where it comes in at 7 cents a kilowatt hour. Like what's the mega pack cost that they charge? Do you know that off the top of your head?
Yeah. So if you go to the Tesla site, they have.
Does that number work?
What would the number work for?
Does 2.5 million per mega pack work economically?
Yeah, it works economically. Yeah, it works economically. $2.5 million, but plus you can buy them in volume and get them under $2 million. So if you're a big company like Pepsi or Walmart, you're going to say, okay, we've done our test with 10 trucks, 100 trucks. They have a fleet of like 40,000, I think, for Pepsi and for Walmart and that kind of thing each. So they'll go to the huge numbers. They'll get the sub $2 million packs if they, just makes sense for them to own it. And then if you were to do charge and discharge once per day of it, you can say, okay, let's do 4 million megawatt hours, so 4,000 kilowatt hours every day. And you do that at, it's shaving off 10 cents, and that's $400 per day and 300 days. So it's like, I don't know, like $150,000, I think. So if you have that 10 cents of utility per kilowatt hour somehow, either through that or through solar or something like that. Plus, also you're getting 20-30% off because of the Inflation Reduction Act. So the Inflation Reduction Act gives you like a 50% tax incentive, which I think calculates out to something else. So it can reduce that payback period again to the 7-8 year range. Other question?
Yeah, and then I had a follow-up. Basically, for the mega pack, it can discharge at 2 megawatt hours, so it's kind of in line with the charging rate that Tesla advertised. But in terms of charging from the utility, how does that energy? Because I don't really know how it works, but how can the utility provide 2 megawatt hours of power draw to the pack, or how does that work?
So it is possible. So the way the grid works is, you have these 250 megawatt to 1 gigawatt, typically power plants, natural gas or coal or nuclear. Nuclear ones being bigger, coal being medium sized, natural gas being smaller typically. So then the power from those power plants, those firm storage, then goes out to transformers and substations, where basically it goes out like a spider web kind of thing, and say steps down by 10. So one power plant feeds 10 of these transformer substation things, where you step down and say I take a gigawatt and step it down to 100 megawatts, right? And then it goes to another set of substations, and it takes it on down to another 10x to 10 megawatts. And then it gets down to 1 megawatt, where it's a smaller substation is feeding a community of 1,000 homes, like that, right? So that's it steps down, the voltage steps down from megavolt on down, right? So that's kind of how things step down. So basically you go to a substation level, and that's where you want to, like, instead of sucking 4 substations of power, I want to only suck 1 substation of power, right? And you'd be considered a prime factory customer when you have that kind of high usage. Go ahead.
Yeah, so basically, my whole fear was, for that type of power draw, the utility rate would have to be higher. But from what I'm kind of gaining, you're saying that you're kind of like a prime customer, so you would get a more wholesale rate. So that's how Tesla confirmed 7 cents kilowatt hour.
Right. But plus also, that if you're at a high volume, you're buying it wholesale. They're planning for it. It's not like they can treat you like an ordinary household schmuck who's getting variable rate usage and stuff like that. They have to make better plans for your usage. Go ahead.
Yeah, and then sorry, Alistair, I'll let you go after this. So, this would kind of stand to reason that maybe Tesla won't really offer V4. Oh, well, actually, no, they probably will. But like, how would the economics work for V4 supercharging away from your factory and away from where your trucks are?
So I would presume that, you would, if I'm Pepsi or Walmart and something like that, I'm cutting my my contract lease deal with Tesla, just like a, all gym membership kind of thing for, 24-hour fitness or something like that. I can go anywhere and do whatever, and I still have my whatever base rate thing. So they would, pre-buy everything that they need, because they know, okay, I'm going this route to this route all the freaking time. I'm going from Pepsi bottling plant A to Dallas. It's going to be that run all the time. I'm charging all the time. So they can help Tesla plan and say, okay, I need this thing wherever I'm going across the United States or Europe or whatever. And so then they pre-buy it, they pre-arrange it. So it's all done. So there should be no surprises where I suddenly need to charge someplace. But if they do, they're a big volume customer that have the deal worked out. Any other questions there? Alistair, you had it before?
Yeah, I just wanted to add something on the kind of the pack and the power usage, and if someone wants to have a mega pack on site, what are the implications of that? I have a little bit of experience in this area, and that's why I wanted to ask about the duty cycle, because there are a lot of advantages to having a battery, right, for an industrial customer. A lot of the things you've already mentioned, Brian, about like being able to reduce your peak load. That gives you your peak load to an industrial, big factory is a big problem for the utility, because that's what they have to plan for in the capacity of all of the generation and all of the substation transformer equipment that they have to give you that headroom. And if you can reduce your peak power, then you become a better customer. You'll probably get a better deal. But having a massive battery pretty much means you need to be able to be charging it all the time, because although it's going to output power at like 2 megawatts or whatever, if you've got two trucks, I'm not sure. I'm not sure exactly what the charging speed of a semi is, but if it's like 1 megawatt, say, and you can charge 2 semi trucks at the same time at full power, and you use maybe just under 50% of the total battery size. But depending on how often trucks are coming back to be recharged, you're draining a lot of the battery. You're going to have to charge it at some rate depending on how often trucks are going to be coming back. So if you're going to add some level to your base load as well, but you're probably taking down your peak. You're going to add some level, like if you can charge your mega pack. I'm not sure if I think the charging rate of a mega pack is the same as the output power, I think, but I'm not 100% sure about that. So the 2 megawatt output pack can probably be, I'm assuming, can be charged at 2 megawatts. So you're going to charge it at some fraction of that, depending on how often trucks are going to be coming to recharge. So it's probably somewhere on the order of like a tenth to a sixth of the a couple of hundred kilowatts is probably what you're roughly adding to your base load to charge it at. So basically be charging constantly.
Yeah, so my calculation is you probably want to size it and get your draw where it's you're doing 4 hours or 6 hours of delivering power to whatever trucks you're doing, and then you're drawing power at 1/4, 1/5, and 1/6 the max rate, right? That's where you're buffering the thing, and economically it seems to, I would think, work out better to do that kind of step down where you use the megapacks to do that. And then again, because that you have this thing that, just like I know that I would buy so much diesel, however many thousands of barrels per day, that I would do some kind of trying to do a volume contract on that. I know that I need that much power. I would want to cut a deal with the power plant thing, or I'd want to put the CapEx in and make my solar, and then decide it that way. So they'd be managing that as they shift over, for for Pepsi, 40,000 trucks going all electric semi would be, what was $3 billion of diesel fuel. It goes into like $500 million of electricity. So they would, have motivation to work out the capex on that to make that efficient as possible. Go ahead.
Yeah, and effectively, the megapack kind of acts as a transformer between the utility and the truck, basically, because it can power that 1 megawatt right into the truck. If the utility is delivering 1 megawatt into the megapack, well, effectively you could draw down the megapack and use the utility power at the same time, kind of buffer it.
Right, and so then also this goes to that whole master plan 3, to the statements about 10 terawatt hours per year, 300 terawatts for the full conversion. This is where, the transformation really hits the road. That basically, the need for semis because of this large economic signal, and then the megapacks going at, to scale up to a terawatt or more like that. I have that in a bull, bear, and base case where, my bull case, it goes up to that 10 terawatt level, in the 2030, 2035 timeframe. And the money on that is just insane. It becomes the biggest thing. If you're able to have the demand, where you're converting the grid and the solar and all that other stuff at that multi-terawatt scale, then that becomes bigger than the cars and trucks combined. Go ahead.
Yeah, I think it's also going to be, all the semis are kind of going to come in a package. And, if you have a semi truck like an Amazon warehouse or a Walmart or a PepsiCo factory, you're going to need solar on the roof as well, because I don't know if the utilities are going to be able to, support this type of infrastructure. So solar with, that much square footage of roof is going to be a combo sale for sure.
Yeah, that's right. And then the other thing is that if, my bull and bear case, my bull and base case starts happening in the 2027, 2028-ish timeframe, maybe even 2026. When Tesla's throwing off these $100 billion and pumping out, 500,000 semis or whatever like that, and megapacks, 100,000, 10 later, something like that, then the amount of money that's going there, it starts to exceed what all your Pepsis and your PG&Es start doing, that you're transforming everything. You're taking out high levels of impact. Then Tesla, I think, becomes its own energy company and own trucking logistics, just like they had to do that for Starlink. That it can easily get to the phase where they say, okay, well, you guys can't keep up. I gotta make this conversion happen, and I'll go faster. So they'll say, okay, I'll take over my energy. I'll still give this up to you, but I'm also going to do my own. And the other thing would be that it would set it up where they get the tax credit. They do that before 2032 and say, I need to capture the tax credit, and I'm going to do that. Yeah, Alistair?
Thanks, Brent. A couple of quick questions about the model, because I think, you're right. This makes so much economic sense for someone who would own a battery and have a fleet of trucks. It's a no-brainer, particularly if it's in a heavy electricity usage site at the minute. The problem of that I can maybe foresee at scale is quite complex for that customer to start managing their energy usage in a way that supports the appropriate use of the battery. Do you think Tesla are going to offer that as a service to those customers, or what do you think? Is that going to be something?
For sure.
Yeah.
Absolutely, for sure. Yes, they will. Just like for managing my Powerwall, I'm using the app. Tesla's giving me the options about how I charge, maintain, reserve power, and all that kind of stuff. So they will definitely make an app for it, and they'll probably toss in some AI and other stuff like that to make it super easy. And they'll also be doing it because it will be the whole auto bidder stuff where they can, help, be a partner to the utilities to sell power, to move it around, to help manage the grid. In order to manage the grid, the better they manage the software. And it's not just what the the Pepsi needs. It's what the overall grid needs. Because basically, if you're replacing the grid to a large extent, at the terawatt level, you're getting towards 30%, 50% of the whole grid, right? Then that you're transitioning to new things. So of course you'd want it to be as stable as possible, as efficient as possible. And so having all of it, managed and talking to each other and sharing the load, moving stuff around, that becomes critical. That you want to make it more stable, more reliable than all that stuff. Because basically 300 terawatt hours means, and we replaced the grid. 300 terawatt hours means I virtually replaced the grid. Just still a few things left, some nuclear, some hydro, and stuff like that. But the coal plants are gone. The other charging things are gone. Natural gas is pretty much gone, or far less important. Fractioning, whatever. You've expanded that solar battery thing to this monster thing, and how you manage it. Because the Pepsi one and the supercharging ones are all part of this big thing. And whatever's happening in Europe, China, Asia, that statement is, 300 terawatt hours is we and whoever else is going on for the ride and our competitors who are somewhat allies are replacing all this old stuff. We're saying, most of Chevron's dead, although they're making oil for plastics and that kind of stuff. Go ahead.
Yeah, I think if we're looking at it, if Tesla wants to do 50,000 semi trucks in 2024, right? What's the gigawatt hours? Is that 4 gigawatt hours or 40?
40 gigawatt hours of batteries. So that's basically the entire Nevada facility. So
you're also saying they need a 6 trucks to 1 megapack situation. So how much megapack batteries is that as well?
So it would also be 40 gigawatt hours of megapacks, but those would be CATL batteries, not Panasonic. They would be iron LFP because the weight wouldn't matter. Particularly you want it cheaper. So all the new megapacks would be CATL LFP, and they'd be packaged up at Lathrop and then possibly produced inside the United States. You want to produce in the United States to get maximum tax benefits. But worst case, you just take it off the ship from CATL, from wherever they're making it. But CATL and the other Chinese guys are making new battery factories here. But initially there'll be a transition period where they're just bringing it from the 2 terawatt hour supply from the China factories.
Yeah, so basically this can give some color in terms of when Elon says 1,000 gigawatt hours vertically integrated. You're saying that'll come from CATL. But I would assume some of it would have to come from Tesla themselves too. Yeah.
As much as Tesla can do the 4680s, and it's not just the 1 terawatt hour, they want 2 and 3. So the more they can make of their own 4680s, then the better it is, especially with this whole Inflation Reduction Act, where you get these 20% tax benefits. So the Tesla's biggest partner will be the U.S. government, at 2032, where if they're doing terawatt hours of batteries at $1 billion, the $200 million is coming from the tax cuts or the tax incentives and things.
Yeah, I don't think the U.S. government has kind of figured that they had to allocate this budget to the onslaught of batteries that's going to come from this. So great findings here.
Yeah, it's a good thing for them though. Like, yes, it's more than they are selling people or accounting, budgeting, but it's a net benefit for the United States to accelerate the transition to electric semis and in megapacks everywhere, that the grid economics work better. So the overall like semis everywhere scenario, then because I've dropped the fuel costs from the 80K down to sub 20K, then when you order stuff from Amazon, yes, you have your subscription thing, Amazon Prime, where you're not paying for delivery. But when you don't, it's about 10%, right? So if I drop from, $80,000 to $20,000, then instead of 10%, it's down to 2 or 3, right? So give me a 7% cut over all logistics, not just the goods that are delivered to people, but to businesses and everything. So you want to have that efficiency as this massive countrywide worldwide tax cut when you get to more efficient logistics and energy usage. And so, yes, it's going to be this huge money thing, $100 billion, $1 trillion, whatever, but it's one of the most efficient usages of that. And you're owning the future, air quotes, oil energy industry. You're replacing, half your oil or whatever like that, and a bunch of natural gas, and you're doing it with solar and batteries and whatever else. So you're upgrading your grid. It's only because things kind of, the trucks and stuff look similar that kind of hides the fact that they're actually revolutionary in terms of the costs for the customers, the Pepsis and the people who drive the cybertrucks, and then revolutionary for the whole national economy. It is that changing from the horse and buggy steam train thing to this modern thing and doing it super fast. So it tricks people into thinking I can dismiss it because it looks the same. I'm confused that my horse and carriage looks like this electric horse and carriage. It confuses. So, yeah. Go ahead. Any other questions?
Yeah, Brian, in the beginning, what do you figure, for the initial ramp of semi-truck, do you think pricing, where do you think pricing will be for the semi-truck in the initial ramp?
Because the old price was 180K, whatever that was, pre-inflation thing 5 years ago, and you got the 40K tax credit, I'm thinking it's 250K for the truck, because pretty much everything's gone up by that level, so I'm thinking 250K is likely, but I wouldn't be surprised if it's 300K. I think it could be 300K for the 500-mile truck.
Yeah.
200K.
If we kind of look at a net present value perspective, really that's still kind of cheap, right?
Yeah, it's still, the economics still work out. The fact that I have a 4-year payback period instead of 3, it's still insanely good business investment to do it.
All right, if you guys excuse me for 1 second, Jordan, welcome.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Oh, sorry, was my mic on the whole time? Sorry about that.
No, we didn't hear it.
Okay.
I have a couple of questions for you. So Tesla patented something related to cathode yesterday, and I was looking at your Twitter to see if you had said anything about it. I didn't see anything. What are your thoughts on the article that came out yesterday or the day before?
Oh, I haven't had a chance to look into it yet, but it sounded like it was something that was related to their acquisition of spring power, where they're just looking at how they can produce cathode materials without waste, etc. But like that's my off the cuff impression of just like the title of it. But as I said, I haven't looked into it yet. One thing, like you guys were talking about the Inflation Reduction Act, and I talked to a lot of people who are involved in the creation of that and the crafting of it. And the primary reason for that was geopolitics, and the environmental and cost savings aspect of it were secondary. It's as a Tesla shareholder, the primary benefit is going to be increased margins, but it doesn't necessarily do a whole lot to accelerate the transition to sustainable energy. It just shifts where it's happening. It's creating a supply chain that's parallel to China's supply chain, because they pretty much have a monopoly.
Well, what about the $7,500 EV credit?
Oh, well,
Do anything to accelerate the shift, right?
well, we're supply limited rather than demand limited.
If it allows EV companies to charge a little higher,
Mhm.
and Tesla is supply limited, but not everybody is supply limited.
I can't comment on that. I would have to go through and look at all the different companies and what they're doing. But in terms of at least the major player in the U.S. market, Tesla, they can't produce enough vehicles. So you make a good point. I'd have to look into that. But at least the people I talked to, as far as what their intent was with the Inflation Reduction Act, it was more geopolitical.
Gotcha. Okay, and then on the cathode patent talking about, any possibility that it might be related to dry coating for the cathode side? As you mentioned in your videos, you talk about how it's easier to do it on the anode side, and easier to do it on the cathode side, more difficult to do it on the anode side, and Tesla hasn't been able to do it on the anode side. but we're trying to figure out the cathode side. Any possible to that this is that is?
Well, it sounded like this was related to the actual production of cathode material. Once again, I haven't looked at it, but when you produce a battery cathode, the first thing you have to do is you have to get all the raw materials together. You have to get the lithium, nickel, et cetera, get all that together. So Tesla's doing the lithium hydroxide at Corpus Christi, I think is where they're doing it. And you take that lithium hydroxide, combine it with nickel at a cathode production plant, which makes the cathode powder. And I think that that's what this patent was related to. And then you take that cathode powder, you combine it with binder, et cetera, and then you stick it onto the electrode, onto the foil.
Gotcha. Thank you, Jordan. I'm looking forward to your video on that patent. Anybody on the speaker board have any questions for Jordan or Brian?
I had a question for Jordan. So I'm not sure if you heard some of my discussion earlier where I make the case that the semi-truck, one is this economic slam dunk, 10x force. Basically, you're saving $80,000 up to $8,000 per year on the fuel versus electricity. And so that's a bigger signal, 10x signal versus $4,000 average savings for a Model 3 Model Y. But then that means that the megapack has to come in at scale on the order of 5 to 1, 10 to 1 versus the truck. So if I buy 10 trucks at $2 million on Pepsi, then I need at least one megapack for each of the 5 or 10 trucks, because a megapack at just under 4 megawatt hours can charge 6 semi trucks at 70% charge over the course of a day. So if I want to shave my peak load thing to 25% of that, then I would ensure wholesale pricing and all those kind of things by having the megapack. What's your impression of that analysis?
Amen. I don't think people realize it's a stealthy way. The semi is a stealthy way to increase their energy storage and to increase that side of the business.
Right.
I'm actually planning on doing a whole video on that topic because it's so interesting. Because you can't just drop one of these mega chargers in anywhere. Like for instance, panning back for a second, my view is that there's going to be both a V4 supercharger for Tesla vehicles, which will be able to hit a megawatt, and then there's actually going to be the mega charger, which is like 2 to 3 megawatts. I think that's at least going to be required for the semi, and they're going to be 2 separate products. Mm-hmm. Now, just with a mega charger, just for like that 1 megawatt, I checked with a local factory that's 40,000 square foot and has hundreds of employees, and it's a very electricity intensive factory. And their like steady state run rate was about 200,000 to 300,000 kilowatts. So you're talking about, several of these chargers, multiple of these just V4 superchargers would be several megawatts. And then if you're looking at a mega charger station, you're looking at multiple chargers, semis charging at once. You're looking at like peak loads of 10 to 20 megawatts. So you can't just build that anywhere. You can't just pull that off of any spot in the grid. Tesla will have to build their own energy reservoirs at those charging stations because the grid just won't be able to handle it.
Right, that's what they're expecting. Like I was ballparking, if they do 50,000 semis in 2024, then the full length of production, 10,000 megapacks, would have to go to charging stations, on-site charging, and that kind of thing. And then you have to do other, like I said, solar projects, other things, or there's a bit of abundance of solar and wind in certain locations, because they're curtailing power in Texas to 5%. So there's terawatts hours of ill-timed solar and wind in various locations in Texas and California, which you could then tap into by choosing your location correctly.
Yeah, absolutely. There's take advantage of the excess capacity, and that kind of goes, kind of back to what Tony Seba is saying about superpower. That these solar, wind are going to get so cheap, they're going to have this excess capacity. What are you going to do with it? How are you going to harness that? So I think I think that's part of the reason why Tesla's focusing more on batteries than they are on the solar side of the business, because there's plenty of solar, et cetera, being deployed, but there's not. We need a lot more batteries going onto the grid. That's the main priority at the moment. Otherwise, we're going to end up in a situation like Germany.
All right. The other thing, though, is also as I run my bear base and bull case out several years, if they really succeed with Tesla Semi, going up to 400,000, 800,000 of the 4 million global, that and then how that drives the megapacks and that kind of stuff, that they start getting bigger and they're wagging the whole world in terms of like what they're doing, and then they would become their own energy company, become their own logistics company, because all the other guys become too small to deal with it. They will want to go full Starlink and do everything themselves, but they would, become their prime customer to start building a lot of trucks and energy and deploying it, and also capturing the tax benefit of the 50% incentives that will be flowing around for the next 10 years. Allison?
Cool. Thanks, Brian. Jordan, I just want to echo initially one of the things you said there about, I think you're right, why Tesla are focusing more on batteries than solar. I have been sort of discussing this with people in the energy industry here in the UK lately. There's a big net zero agenda, which is driving a lot of policy decisions and at the minute. And there's some estimates that the amount of renewable penetration required, or that is currently estimated to be required to reach net zero, is actually far too high, because if you have a wide deployment of batteries, you can massively reduce the amount of solar and wind power you actually need compared to the current estimates. So it makes, because of the peak shaving and time shifting that you can do, all of the things you can do with storage to balance load, means that the actual amount of renewable generation is probably currently thought to reach net zero is probably an overestimate.
Jordan, you're not speaking.
Yeah, well, I didn't have anything to add. I think it's a good point. Yeah, it was as he said, Alistair was kind of echoing and picking up on the thread that I was putting down. Yeah.
What you're thinking about what I was saying about, when they become their own energy company or get to the logistics side? What's your feeling on that?
Well, I mean, I think at least it's obvious to me that that's the direction that's everything's headed. I'm not sure how long that's going to take, but there's two thoughts on my end. One is Tesla's battery supply. How that's going to look in the next 2 to 3 years, because that's going to require an enormous amount of nickel. But I've covered that to death in videos. It sounds like Tesla has that sorted one way or another. But looking into the deep future, it looks like Tesla and Elon's companies, sorry, I'm probably going way off track here, but it's going to become like one of those super conglomerates that you see in sci-fi shows, where there's this mega corporation that kind of controls the world. It's like, I hope that Elon, as part of his legacy, he either breaks everything up or he puts in place some really smart governance. Because I mean, look at all the difficulties you have with like, Comcast or something like that with one individual company. It's just a total pain in the butt. But what if there's one company that controls pretty much a good portion of the global economy and controls like the energy you use, the transportation that you use, and just kind of super monopoly. So
so I think a few people have made the point that basically Tesla, SpaceX, Elon Co. becomes the Dune Chom companies. So there are those few science fiction companies that are taken all over. I have some videos where I go really far out and talk about the fact that if you have Tesla bots, in the gigafactory, the factories making the factories that make the robots and all that kind of stuff, then basically you can dump one onto Mars or the moon, and then if they do the mining too, they close the circle on the whole thing, then that becomes exponential. How long does it take me to double from 1 to 2, 2 to 4? If it's 1 year, I have 1,000 times as many. And then if you're also having a factory that makes your starships, then the exponential means that I colonize, industrialize the whole solar systems in 1 to 3 centuries. So it's just like, it becomes literally that science fiction thing where like this thing has become the entire solar system economy. So it's totally space thing where it's just like, they have everything. That scenario is pretty much there.
Can I go back and pick up on a thread? There's a question that was asked earlier to me about, supply and demand for vehicles. Has anybody actually done that analysis? Because I felt a bit naked on that question because I really don't have the answer. I follow Tesla's supply and demand, but I don't know how many EVs companies out there have excess supply. Are there any?
I don't think there are. Well, other than the minor case where like Mazda makes 300 and they or sells 300, but they could have sold like 5,000 or something like that. So there are all the guys who are utterly failing, they had extra demand. Also, previously there were things like where you had Nissan Leaf going out where they were selling a bunch, but then they had to drop MSRP by $12,000 in order to clear out the fact that they had crap EVs that were unsold. So there's these cases where, there's crappy vehicles that have to be super discounted or have to do something or moved out or whatever. But they're the ones that are failing. But if you make a good BYD car, then you're have selling everyone you can make. Anyone succeeding, is selling them all. I'm not sure about Mach-E and ID4. I think
I'll step in real quick. It's really just Tesla that is supply limited, guys. Everybody else is demand limited even on EVs. Look at Lightning inventories. You'll see that their supply is surging.
How much of this can be attributed to macro conditions and how much of it contributed to just a lack of demand for that specific product? Somebody needs to do a video on that.
So
I wish I had time because I'm curious. Yeah,
it's both. But if you all else equal, if you add the $7,500 credit, you're going to shift some F-Series buyers from ICE to EVs.
I think BYD does have a bit of a back order, so they're doing pretty well depending on model. But yeah, you can look at I think about the Mach-E and the ID4 plans. They're totally under what they said that they would be able to sell and do. Lucid Rivian, I think Lucid was doing massive discounts to try and keep orders going. So yeah, the demand limited is pretty clear on what they plan to do and then what they ended up doing in plans said they would do this year and then actually did this year. I think they're dropping off. But I can do a video on that with more research, so I'll step up and do that.
Yeah, well, I'm curious because it's like, what out of the supply, I'd be curious how much the $7,500 tax credit, how much that actually increases the amount of electric vehicles produced. Because it's not like when they wrote this legislation that wasn't on the plate. It's just their primary purpose was geopolitical, and then the second and third concerns were cost and increasing supply. But it was part of their calculus.
So, for example, I think Ford has plans to increase F-Series Lightning production for next year. And I think that's in part due to the $7,500 credit. That's my speculation. Obviously, the company is never going to come out and say that. On the other side, let's say the Chevy Bolt, for example, they're increasing production probably to meet their credit requirements, etc. But if Chevy Bolt prices, GM could charge a little higher with the $7,500 credit, maybe, then maybe they could produce a little more. But whether it's geopolitical or to shift from ICE to EV, etc., it's probably a mix of both, right, Jordan? So I guess I'm trying to understand why, what are you trying to understand here?
Oh, sorry, I jumped in the middle of the conversation and somebody threw the ball my way, so I was just pulling on that thread.
Yeah, so let me understand why you believe the IRA is primarily because of geopolitics and not to shift ICE to EVs a little bit.
Oh, okay. Yeah, so the reason why that is because I talked to the people who wrote it. or who are involved in the writing and crafting of it.
But why
the people who talk-
involved?
Oh, I'm not saying it was just, that's why I said it's all three. I said it's primarily geopolitical, but their second and their third concerns were cost and environmental concerns. So at no point did I say it was only geopolitical. I said it was primarily geopolitical.
Gotcha. Okay. So I guess we're expecting, there are people in the audience that know IRA better than I do. They're welcome to request to speak. I don't want to talk about things that I don't analyze closely. So my understanding is that we had, Tesla Daily talk, Rob Maurer talk about this too in yesterday's video, that we had a new document that came out that really didn't introduce much new information, but we're supposed to get more detail in the next couple of days. Is that correct?
I think that's correct.
Okay, so we'll wait for that. I don't have any expectations, any specific expectations for what's about to come. My base understanding is that on January